This episode is brought to you by Jersey Mike's. Points in the Paint. It's our weekly podcast that celebrates the WCC Women's Conference. It's just one of the best basketball conferences on the West Coast. I'm Ann Schatz, joined by the one and only Mary Murphy. Mir, it's the last week of the regular season in the WCC, and thanks to last week's game, it's a delightfully jumbled mess.
It is. It was we say this every week, don't we? And it's another wild week.
Yes.
Wow, look what happened, and expect the unexpected. San Francisco, with all the injuries and everything that's been built up against them this year, goes up to Gonzaga in front of 5,500 people and upsets the best team that, had they won 14 straight
14?
games?
Yep, 14.
And beat them 70-68 on senior day. So it's Vonnie Ejim's senior day, all those great seniors up there in front of all those people who just assume they're going to win. But this is why you play the games. We talk about this all the time when we sit down to do a broadcast. And so now we have a tie at the top with Portland, who they're on their own winning streak. I think they've won 10 straight. So here we are, sitting here wondering who's going to take the number one seed, who's going to be the champion. And, Alexis Mark, who we talked about last week, is the WCC Player of the Week.
And Mir, here's the caveat. Here's the cherry on top. Alexis Mark, get this, just named one of a handful of Players of the Week on the national scale. It's the U.S. Basketball Writers Association, Annie Myers Drysdale, National Player of the Week. And Alexis Mark is in the company of Juju Watkins this week and named the recipient of that award, along with a few others. I mean, Yvonne Ejim has won the award with Gonzaga, and now it's Alexis Mark with Portland. So how about that? 2 WCC players have been recognized on this national level.
Alexis Mark, all the great players in this conference, and she's the one for week in and week out in the last couple of weeks has been outstanding nonstop. Their point guard, and you brought this to my attention, in the 2 wins, 11 assists and no turnovers. I mean, it's almost impossible. So Portland on the rise. Gonzaga's got to kind of find themselves, get their footing back. But what a weekend, in that one game up in Spokane, and the trickle down on everything else.
So I want to make sure I've got this right. Going into the final week of the regular season, Portland, Gonzaga tied atop the standings, but the all-important tiebreaker belongs to the Zags, correct?
Right. They won both of the matchups. And then, as you move down, Washington State sits in really good shape. They only have one game coming up, so they'll be able to play on Thursday, and then they rest to the tournament. Oregon State, solid weekend. They sweep. The first time this year they've had a winning record overall. And Kennedy Schuler, just with the evolution of her as a point guard, really arriving in the last couple of weeks. And the 2 wins, just basically comes off to get water and a towel and then goes back in. 14 assists, just 1 turnover. It has really been able to handle things and move this team forward that we didn't really know who they were going to be or how good they could be. But Ann, I got to tell you, of all the stories, the University of San Francisco beating Gonzaga and breaking that winning streak.
Yep.
I have to tip my cap to head coach Molly Goodenbauer. They start the season in the WCC 5-0. It's like they are shot out of a cannon. Deborah Dos Santos, she's on the podcast. She's amazing. Their leading scorer, leading rebounder. And then they lose her with an ACL. They lose 4 straight and then somehow get their bearings. And this is a team that just comes out and charges and plays and works. And they can finish anywhere, maybe from 4th to 7th. And we don't know what's going to happen as this season wears on. But when you talk about Coach of the Year and facing adversity, Molly Goodenbauer has met the challenge. Her team has met the challenge. And I'm just thrilled for what they've been able to put together in light of the injuries to their best player and one of the best players in the conference. So I'm just excited about everything that's going on. And as you can tell, and I normally am, but it's just, I just think this last week and what's going to unfold and then rolling into the tournament is just a whole lot of fun.
And I think USF, you really shining a light in such a great way on this program. I think it's a good reminder that you don't fall asleep on anybody. For a while there, when they hit the skids, when Deborah goes down, they have that losing streak. and they were kind of a under the radar, kind of forgotten at that point. And Goodenbauer would not let them be forgotten. And the fact that they go into the kennel, as you mentioned, in front of 5,500 on senior night to deny Gonzaga that chance to say, we're it again. We're the regular season champs again. It was pretty impressive. And Goodenbauer has that grit about her that her,
Yes.
and her teams mirror that. And it's pretty cool to watch.
It is, and it reminds me of what she was like as a player. She would
Yeah.
just get out there and get down, just do her job, and on both ends of the floor. I'm thrilled for her. And as long as we're talking about coaches, do want to mention that the University of San Diego announced this week that Cindy Fisher, their longtime head coach, would not be returning next year. I know both of us have the utmost respect for the job Cindy did over her 20-year career, what she accomplished. But more than that, how much she represented what being a Torero was all about, what being, on that hilltop was all about, and the way those teams went out there and played. And I can just say, on this year where they've been decimated by injuries, they always came out and competed. I'm so happy they won those 2 games last week, the weekend before, and we got to meet with Kylie Horsemeyer on a podcast last week. But I'm happy to know Cindy and what she meant to that university.
You put it perfectly, Mayor. And I'm so glad Coach Fisher will be with the Toreros in Vegas. And I'm really glad that you and I will be able to have a few minutes with her and thank her personally for every single player's life that she impacted and that university and the WCC. The ripple effect is alive and well with Coach Cindy Fisher.
Yeah, and just moving towards that, now we're going to talk to, next time we move on here is a first year head coach at Pepperdine, Katie Faulkner, and one of the greatest players in the University of Montana history. Played professionally in Europe, 10 years as an assistant and an associate head coach. Married with 2 little kids. I mean, this woman does everything. We've known her forever, and just can't wait to get to know her a little better.
Yeah, her stops have been really impressive when you think of where she came from, 3 years at Washington, before that 5 years at Oregon State, before that Wisconsin. I mean, she cut her teeth with some great coaches as an assistant at Pepperdine. First-year head coach Katie Faulkner. When we come back, she'll join us. This episode is brought to you by Jersey Mike's. Welcome back to Points to the Paint. We promised you Pepperdine's Katie Faulkner, and we're going to deliver the goods. Katie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to speak to the both of you. I mean, I rave about you constantly to my team, but everything you've done for the game, and that you currently there's an honor that you guys bring from your history, but also you do such a great job of welcoming the new, and I'm a part of that, and so it's really quite an honor to be here.
Appreciate that. We're going to have you on again just for that alone. All right. So first time head coach, Katie Faulkner, you've made stops at many places, impressive stops as lead assistants for really good coaches. What's it like to be in that seat won over? You're the head coach. What's it like?
Well, they always say you're never ready to be a head coach, and they're right, right? You're not ready until you just have to be. But I always say it, well, I wasn't ready to be a mom, and then you just do it. And so I've really enjoyed learning all the ins and outs. I think there's way more appreciation for my former, bosses, as far as the hats that they wear. And at the end of the day, the weight of the responsibility and decisions and all those questions they were asking me as an assistant, I'm like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. And now I'm like, no, it's a big deal. And this is why, and this is important because of this person and how many people you can just affect with one decision. And so it's a big responsibility. And honestly, it's been a joy, a joyful burden at times too. But I'm very, very grateful to be able to do it with my staff that I've put together and also this administration. And so really, I've just enjoyed every new kind of season with it.
Katie, we've known each other a long time, followed your career. You could have been named a coach in a lot of different places. My question is, why Pepperdine? Why is Pepperdine the place for you to be a first-time head coach? And why was that an attractive place for you to put down roots with your family?
That's a great I love talking about this because it wasn't Pepperdine for a long time for me. Back when I was being recruited here, it was like, oh, Pepperdine, it's on the beach. It's that. Um, and that's it. And so, what more could it be? But when I thought more about, going into the process of preparing to be a head coach, I believe that being a head coach, the great ones, what I've seen is that it's all about creating an environment. And that is the number one key to success, I think, is that environment, because basketball's hard. It's simple, but it's hard. And it's all about the people that you put in that environment. How do you make them rise to be their best? And so in that environment, I wanted a culture somewhere that you could come and you could be competitive, a competitive character. Well, that's me. Like, I've done that my entire life. And so from the way I was raised, the way I competed, the programs I've been a part of, I believe that we will surround ourselves with people of competitive character here, period. And I think it starts with people. But after that, how can you offer a unique experience from an academic perspective? Basketball's 4 years. Beyond that, there's so many opportunities out there to strengthen young women to go into the workforce. And so academics was really important to me in that. And so I believe that Pepperdine, checks all those boxes in regards to our business school, our law school. We're getting a medical school here next year. And so just the reputation of Pepperdine, the fact that you can hand a resume and they see that your diploma's from Pepperdine and you're like, oh, well, that's different, But furthermore, it's the Pepperdine community that since I've been here, that is so, so unique. And so I'm like, why not Pepperdine? Why can't you come in here? Oh, and by the way, we live in Malibu. And so I believe that you can hang banners at Pepperdine because of those cornerstones.
What would head coach Katie Faulkner have learned from assistant coach Katie Faulkner?
That's a great question.
Mm.
I think trust your gut,
Okay.
but don't rush.
Hmm.
And so I think that I think there is, like, my initial reaction often is correct, but there's a way to respond. And so I don't want to be a coach that reacts. I want to be a coach that responds and responds well. And I still have to be me. And so be who you are within that, and not get pulled by, well, this is what you should do, or this is what you shouldn't do, but remain myself, but still be thoughtful in that process.
Mhm. Mayor, you got to have one more for Katie before we let her go. You got to.
Well, just that the tournament's coming up. It hasn't been the best season for your squad, but you've competed, but you've been a part of a lot of tournament teams. What's it take to get to that final?
Love that.
Yeah, those teams that I've been on that are the championship caliber teams, been so fortunate. They just had a resilience to them. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during that COVID year of Stanford, because those kids, they were in hotel rooms, they were eating out of boxes, and they went on to win the Natty, And so the teams that I've been a part of, they just have a focus. Nothing else matters. And it's the hardest time to do that because there's so many distractions. So all the media, there's all these other teams. You're in Vegas, you're in all these places where there's so many distractions and awards are coming out and this and rankings and nothing else matters except the present moment and staying focused and eliminating the garbage and just getting the job done. And you have to do that 3, 4, 5, in our case, 6 days in a row. And so there is a definite resilience that comes with that. But it's special. It takes a special character to do that. And so I'm excited to finish up this year with this young group of women that's done their very best at times, and to also work towards building a team that will do that.
I love that. Katie, thanks so much for spending some time with us. We so appreciate getting to know you a little bit better, and our viewers do as well. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. I would do it at any time.
You got it. Good luck to you in the Waves next week. And then, of course, in Vegas. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be joined by a guy who knows the WCC and specifically Oregon State very, very well. Oregonian beat writer Nick Daschel does a great job. He's the real deal. Stick around. When we come back, Nick will join us. This episode is brought to you by Jersey Mike's. Welcome back to Points in the Paint. We are delighted to bring aboard Nick Daschel, one of the best writers for the Oregonian. Nick, thanks so much for taking the time with us. Let's talk women's basketball, huh?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. You're on the Oregon State beat on the men's and women's side, but we're going to talk about Scott Rueck and his club making a push in their first affiliate season with the WCC. Your take on Oregon State right now as we head into the final week of the regular season?
Well, I mean, they're in the hunt. I look at the top of the WCC and I think there's 5, maybe 6 teams that could win the tournament. I definitely think the top 5 could win it, and Oregon State's, in that mix. I think it would be a little more helpful if they finished 4th rather than 5th, just because you have one less game. But I mean, they proved they can beat Gonzaga. They proved they can beat Portland. They haven't proved they can beat Washington State, but I don't know why they couldn't. I mean, we kind of knew this was going to happen. That the season was going to start off slow. It takes a while to learn what Scott wants them to do, and they're catching on. They've won. Well, they won 6 out of 7, I think. They're playing better defensively. They seem to pick it up when they need to. They're not, not flashy. They don't blow teams out, but when they need to put teams away, they've been doing it lately.
Hey, Nick, when you go back to maybe December and you think about the WCC and on the women's side, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think we'd be sitting here with this exciting of a race heading, a week or so into the tournament?
Kind of. I did. I didn't think there was anybody that just stood out. I mean, you could see what Gonzaga was kind of scuffling, and Portland was winning, but they weren't playing anybody that was the big names, and so you kind of thought that the top end might be pretty competitive, and that's kind of what it's turned out to be. I mean, Gonzaga and Portland maybe have separated themselves a little bit, but boy, I thought I actually thought it was going to be pretty tight, and it really has. Gonzaga and Portland are probably the best 2 teams in the league. I actually think Portland might be the best team in the league, but not by enough to say they're the prohibitive favorite to win the conference tournament. So yeah, I thought this was going to be a really competitive league at the top end.
Before we jump into Portland, your take on Scott Rueck. He just picks up his 600th career victory. We know he spent quality seasons at George Fox, winning that national championship in a lower division. He comes to Oregon State, makes his presence felt, and he has picked up a ton of wins. You've covered him, talked to him. Your take on Rueck and his success in Corvallis?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody should be surprised with what they're doing this year. I mean, they put this roster together kind of, just on the fly in last May and early in June, but he kind of got the players he wanted, and not at the level they've been used to getting, but they got enough players at the right positions that they've been able to, put a team together. They've got the post players, going, which he likes, and they've found a little bit from 3. That was a big issue early in the season. It's still not up to what Oregon State's used to, but it's much better than it was. And once they got a little bit of perimeter shooting and figured out the defense, I mean, then that's what Scott does. He their defense is complicated, takes some time to figure out, but they figured it out. And I expect they're going to be better and better in the next 2-3 weeks.
Nick, of all the players you've seen or coaches you've seen work in the WCC on the women's side this year, are there any performances that really stick out in your mind and go, wow, that was really fun, or a player maybe you didn't really know about that you've seen that's just has been memorable for you?
Well, I mean, I don't have a player so much, but I mean, the game that just stood out to me was Portland's 25-point win over Oregon State. That was just the way Portland played that night. They could have beaten a lot of top 25 teams. That was probably the best performance of any WCC team this season. The way they just manhandled Oregon State, and Scott made it sound like he wasn't surprised that happened, because it came after Oregon State had beat them at Childs, but still the way they took apart Oregon State that night, that was probably the most impressive thing I've seen so far in the WCC.
Yeah. I mean, you look at this pilot bunch, and There's a ton of veterans. They understand Mike Meek's system. Two-time defending champs in Vegas, beating the heavily favored Gonzaga club to win those titles. What is your take on the Pilots from what you've seen this year?
I mean, it's extremely veteran. It's pretty much seniors across the board, and Mike's just a great coach. I mean, they bought into what he's doing, and yeah, I mean, you look at the top end of the league too. It's USF is loaded with seniors. Oregon State, their 4 of their 5 stars are seniors. Portland's pretty much all seniors. I think Washington State's a little bit on the young side, but I mean, the top end is really a senior dominated part of the conference. So
Nick, before we let you go, you're an Oregon native. How satisfying has it been for you, who knows this game so well, to see the powerful surge of women's basketball in the state of Oregon? The Ducks, the Beavers, the Pilots in very good health.
yeah, I mean, and in the WNBA team coming in.
Exactly. Yep.
I mean, I remember taking my daughter to a Portland Fire game, way back in the day, and too bad she's 30 now and lives in Boston, so I can't take her to the WNBA game, but yeah, it's been. I'm actually surprised the WNBA hasn't been here earlier, because I mean, this state has really supported women's basketball.
Nick, as always, thank you so much for what you do for our game. We appreciate the top shelf coverage. It matters. And thanks for joining us today.
All right, we'll appreciate it. Thanks.
Bringing this train to the station with Mary's takes on what I guarantee is going to be the nuttiest week of the season, because so much on the line. Mary, there's games, there's seedings. Go.
Yeah, there is so much, and I mean, I have just pages written of what could evolve here. But what do we know? We know that Gonzaga right now is tied with Portland, but they have the tiebreaker. So if they end up ultimately tied for first and share the title, Gonzaga will get the tiebreaker and be the number 1 seed. And then everything just kind of flows from there. The battle for the 3rd seed, we know Washington State owns the tiebreaker. They have beaten Oregon State twice. The San Francisco dilemma. They have done such a good job this year, but according to my calculations, they can finish anywhere from 4th to 7th. You want to be 5th or 6th. 4th would be just gravy for these guys. So, winning and having a great finish, so important for them. The battle for the 6th seed. So again, Pacific, the end of season, the last 2 regular season games, huge for them. And of course, they have the toughest schedule. They have Gonzaga coming to them, and then Portland coming to them. They lost both those games in the first round, but know that the Zags only beat them by 4 in a very close game. So in a season and where we have seen so many things, like when the week before, you're going, well, that'll never happen. And it does. We have no idea where this is all going to shake loose, but this is where all the work you've done all season long to get the advantage, or at least get it even. Because if you don't own the tiebreaker, or if you are just 1-1, you can't control your own destiny. And this last weekend is all about controlling your own destiny. And St. Mary's and Pacific, so much at stake, so many big games. St. Mary's on Saturday to LMU, and then they have Oregon State coming to them as well. And just there's games galore. Just follow the scoreboard and look at the standings and know that everything matters, because again, 1st and 2nd seeds, you only have to win 2 games to go to the NCAA tournament. 3rd and 4th, you win 3 games in 3 days, you're going, and so it goes.
All right. So the only thing we do know is that the WCC tournament happens in Las Vegas, March 6th through the 11th. That's for sure. And then everything else is just, I don't know. So,
and we know we'll be there, Ann.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Heck yeah. We're going to be there, which means next week when we gather again, we'll have everything confirmed, and it'll be connecting all the dots, and that's going to be fun as well. All right. Whew. We're going to watch with great interest the last week of the regular season in the WCC. We're going to put another episode of Points in the Paint in the books. Mary and I will be back next week as per usual, and we will set up the WCC tournament like nobody's business. Mary, thanks for joining me again today. Nobody better. And thanks for watching, all of you. See you next week.